So what I'll start with is an update from the medical examiner's office related to the autopsy results. Based on preliminary findings, the North Carolina Office of the Chief Medical Examiner has ruled Mr. Little's manner of death as accidental due to drowning. Toxicology results are pending, and there is no set time for when those results may become available. This information has been shared with Mr. Little's family. And what I'd like to do is just take a moment to kind of generally speak to two concerns that I know have come up through the community, not only through Mr. Little's family and friends, but other community members as well. And one is the decision not to search the pond where ultimately Mr. Little was located. Second being what actions were taken over the course of the time of when Mr. Little was reported missing until ultimately he was found in the pond. So after the report was filed, the case was assigned to a detective for follow-up. During that investigation, I believe it was the January 3rd, information by family and friends who were out at the apartment complex where Mr. Little was last seen indicated that there were some tracks near a retention pond and some vehicle tracks near a retention pond in the apartment complex. The detective went to the scene, met with individuals, family and friends that were there, and he had a number of pieces of evidence that really led him not to believe that Mr. Little was in the pond. One of those being that when contact was made with the mother of Mr. Little's child, and I'm not sharing her information publicly at this time, but when he was on the phone with her, presumably after he left the apartment complex, he had made the statement that he believed he was driving in Jamestown on his way to meet with the mother of his child and pick up his child. So that was one piece of information the detective had. Second, the tracks in the grass near the pond went for approximately 8 to 10 feet. They didn't continue. They didn't go into the pond itself, but they were stopped. And so that led the detective to take some additional actions. Maintenance of the apartment complex was contacted, and they relayed to the detective that the pond was only 3 to 4 feet deep at its depth. So you have the statement from Mr. Little in the Jamestown area. You have the tracks that led up to the pond or in the grass but did not continue completely into the pond. They stopped probably anywhere from 15 to 20 feet before ever making it into the pond. You have information from maintenance advising the pond was 3 to 4 feet deep, and if there was a vehicle in there, it would have been seen. And there was also video surveillance from the apartment complex that showed at the time what we believe to be Mr. Little's vehicle leaving the apartment complex about an hour and a half after he was last seen from his friends there at the apartment. All of that information is what led detectives to believe that he was not located in the pond at that time and that he had made it out of the apartment complex and possibly on his way to meet with the mother of his child. So the information out there, we know all of that information has not been shared with the community. Some of it's been in bits and pieces. We just wanted to make sure everybody understood that this was not a case where there was clear evidence that it was obvious that this vehicle had driven into the pond and we just failed to act or did not take that into consideration. It was the opposite, where we did take it into consideration. The steps that the officer took, he also deployed an aerial drone over the pond to see if he could see anything in the water or along the banks of the pond that would indicate the vehicle had went in, and nothing of the evidence pointed to that. So at that point, the investigation continues, and over the next 10 days until Mr. Little was located, there are a number of steps the detective took for investigative follow-up. There were DNA samples collected to enter into our missing database, missing persons database. Cameras were being followed up on. Interviews were done with the last 4 individuals who saw Mr. Little before leaving the apartment complex. We were getting leads and information from the community. We had one lead that somebody had seen him in Lexington after he had been reported missing. We had information from another individual that Mr. Little's phone had called their phone twice, leading us to believe that, again, he may be somewhere still alive at that point. All that information, working with highway patrol, hospitals, following up with leads from family members, are what the detectives worked on in the days leading up to the recovery of Mr. Little's body from the retention pond. I know that there may be other questions, clarifications, concerns, but I want to start by saying that I don't know what it is like to be in Mr. Little's mother's shoes. I am a parent. I have 2 children, but I have not experienced the loss that she is going through or that she experienced. And I hope I never have to experience that, and I wish nobody would ever have to experience that. And we do take that into consideration when we are investigating these cases and the information that is out there and being relayed. And I want folks to know that, it breaks our heart anytime we lose somebody in our community when it doesn't have to happen. And a tragic accident that Mr. Little experienced and the pain his mom is going through, and we're very sorry for that. Any questions?
I have one. What ultimately made GPD search that pond again if there was evidence showing that maybe his car was not there?
So the family contacted a private company, nonprofit. They went out. So we actually obtained additional video footage on Wednesday, and I don't know the date. That would have been the 9th, I believe. Is that Wednesday the 9th? That showed what we believe was his vehicle actually go up over the curb into the grass and then come to a stop. It was ring footage, and for whatever reason the ring footage stopped recording. The vehicle stopped, the ring footage shut down, so there's nothing to show the vehicle continued on into the pond, and there's nothing showing that the vehicle left the area as well. So that footage was available on Wednesday. We believe that the dive team that the family was in contact with saw the footage. They brought out some equipment on Thursday and had identified that, one, the pond was deeper than we were told, that it could be anywhere from 7 to 8 feet deep, and that they were able to detect through some of their equipment that there was possibly an object in there. They couldn't identify what the object was, but they believed it was man-made. It wasn't natural, a tree, something of that nature. With that information, when that was relayed to the detective on Thursday evening, Friday our county dive team responded to the retention pond to evaluate and determine if they could do a search and recovery effort.
Do you believe there was like an issue with the car? I know you said it was an accidental drowning. Like, what do you believe caused it to go inside the pond?
This is the challenging part about my position, and so preliminarily the information we have is that Mr. Little was at the apartment complex drinking. Statements from individuals he was with indicated that he left intoxicated. And at this time, that information leads us to believe that that played a role in him ending up in the pond.
In the video that you saw, I saw the same video that you're describing where it kind of stops right there. What video that you saw made it seem like he appeared to be leaving the apartment complex?
So there's video from the apartment complex itself, surveillance video, that approximately 5 a.m. that morning shows a vehicle fitting the description of his vehicle leaving. It wasn't clear enough for us to positively identify it through a license plate or verification of seeing him in the vehicle itself. The detectives looked at the video. Some family friends looked at the video and also believed it was his car leaving the apartment complex. And that's really one of the factors that took the detectives away from thinking that he was in the pond.
When you spoke with the dive team, the volunteer divers from the nonprofit, they told me that their underwater drone was able to make out the actual face and hand of a human being as well as the car. Were you privy to those videos at all?
I believe I have seen the video. I can't verify that. Yes, I think I have seen those videos that you're talking about. And so after that initial time when the dive team went out and they verified there was an object in the pond and that it was deeper and they contacted us, our dive team went out that Friday, the next day, and due to weather conditions at that time, the dive team didn't feel that it was safe to do a search or recovery effort. That was the weekend before we had the first snow and frigid temperatures. So the dive team was scheduled to come back Monday. Sometime about 1 o'clock in the morning Saturday night, the dive team that the family had contacted went back onto the property, deployed the underwater drone, and then they were able to confirm that there was in fact a vehicle and a body in the pond. Then we were made aware of that information Monday morning. The dive team was already going to respond out there as scheduled from the previous Friday, so they responded out and then completed the recovery. Yeah.
Is his estimated time of death known at this point?
No, I mean, our assumption is that based off of the information we were provided and the video footage where we see the car go up over the curb and stop in the grass, our assumption is at some point around that time that allowed it to roll down and into the pond. I don't know that they can estimate a specific time of death, but looking at all the facts, we assume that that's when it would have occurred. Sir?
How far out was it in the lake? Was the car in the lake?
I would have to confirm that. It was, and I want to say it was somewhere between 30, 35 feet away from the bank. And another thing, while the detective was out there, they were able to get about a 20-foot metal pole and kind of probe around the edges to see if they could make contact, if it looked like that there was anything, and also try to verify that, yeah, in fact, the depth was only 3 to 4 feet. So that was a step that they had taken along with the drone, along with evaluating, the full scope of the bank into the pond, trying to determine if anything could verify that there may have been a car in that pond. Anything else?
And now that there's an autopsy, I'm pretty sure, like you said, that you've seen messages from Mr. Little's family over the past few weeks. Now there's some sort of resolve. What's your message to them and the community?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't even want to sit up here and begin to say or make it seem like I can understand what the family and friends are going through with that loss. You know, I do think that the detectives that responded followed our processes and procedures. The officers who took the initial report, entering Mr. Little into NCIC, which is the National Computer Database for Missing Persons, a BOLO for him and his vehicle, the follow-up by the detective, all the steps he took, driving the route from the apartment complex to the mother of his child to see if there was any crashes that occurred along those routes, looking for High Point Lake, looking to see if there's any indication that the car went into the lake. You know, all of that follow-up, our detectives, they followed our policies, they followed our procedures. You know, I think anytime we are made aware of scrutiny from our community, you know, we're always self-assessing everything that we do. Are we following best practices? Are we doing everything that we should be doing on every case? Anytime we receive a heightened level of scrutiny from the community, that forces us to take, I believe, a more significant look at what we do, our policies, procedures, and equipment. And so we've done that with this case. We have identified a shortcoming that we have as it relates to equipment. When we were told about the underwater drone that this nonprofit company used, my first question was, do we as a police department have that capacity? And we don't. We do rely on our county dive team for full recovery and search efforts, but we're already discussing now what that best piece of equipment is for us as an agency and how that can be deployed. If we had that piece of equipment, I think we would have a very different outcome, because it would have been very easy for somebody, the detective, to respond, deploy that equipment, and we would have determined that, yes, in fact, there was a car there. We don't have that ability right now. We've met with city leadership, and they're in full support of us determining what is the best piece of equipment for us, and we will have officers that have access to that equipment and can respond on short-term notice. And I think I was probably more surprised because the volume of retention ponds and lakes and bodies of waters that we have here in our area, that we've never really considered that piece of equipment and its need. So I would just say, you know, I don't know that anything I say will bring the mom and the family and friends of Mr. Little comfort. But we as a police department, we feel the impact when we lose anybody in our community, whether it's an accident, whether it's through violence in our community, and we want to do everything we can to support the mom. I do want to address some of the delay that we've had in the release of the information. And what is unique about this position is the incident started out as a missing person, and the detective was completing the follow-up, and they were doing their investigation. It is not uncommon for us to investigate missing persons, and there are a variety of reasons that somebody is listed as missing, from juveniles who are runaways to individuals who just no longer want to be in contact with family members, to individuals who get involved in substance use and will kind of disappear for days on end. And so this missing person, our goal is to determine why it happened. And when we recovered Mr. Little's body, it became a death investigation. And that changes the ability that I have or that I choose in releasing that information. And I'm very careful once it's a death investigation, because we have to maintain the integrity of that investigation. We never want to do anything to jeopardize the integrity of a death investigation, because we can't take that information back. And so once we knew it was a death investigation, our next step was to wait for an autopsy. Unfortunately, that took longer than we wanted, but we don't control that. That is a process through the ME's office. And ultimately, once the autopsy was completed Tuesday, then our next step was to meet with the family, share with them those results, let them ask questions, and let them know everything that we know and the next steps going forward. That happened yesterday, where detectives met with Mr. Little's mother and explained all that information to him. So part of the frustration from the community, I understand, is why don't we know more and why don't we know it sooner? And unfortunately, my priority is to maintain the integrity of a death investigation, because if we don't, and we do something to screw up that investigation, to screw up a court case, if it were in fact to be a homicide, that would be, I think, more tragic than anything. So we always try to put as much information out as we can, trying to be as transparent as possible. Believe me, we have felt the frustration from the community because they have had questions. They wanted to know what we did, why we did it, why decisions were made, and we just have to be careful in how we release that information. Any other questions?
Well, you're just listening to the voice of Chief John Thompson providing an update on the death investigation of Lae'Quan Little. A lot of information released today. He says that his department did release those autopsy results that ruled that Little's death was an accidental due to drowning, and the toxicology reports are still pending. And something interesting, he did address two main concerns coming from the community today: the decision not to search the pond and what actions were taken when Little was reported missing.
Yeah, I think those two concerns were the things that really brought
Sure.
all the scrutiny around, right, from the public and also from the family, of what are you doing and why is this timeline taking so long?
Sure.
So he kind of went through all of those different steps about why they chose not to go into that pond, and also that the weather played a part in it as well. But the big thing that he said was, you know, when we have scrutiny like this, we take a look at our policies, our procedures, our equipment, and where did we maybe have a shortcoming. And he for sure said that underwater drone. If they would have had that underwater drone, instead of waiting for the weather to clear, they may have been able to search that pond earlier and be able to get those questions answered for the family earlier.
Certainly such a devastating case. And remember, you can find this entire piece on our website, WFMYnews2.com. We'll be right back.